Welcome to the Live Fit podcast with your host, Glenn Johnson. Today you will learn techniques for permanent weight loss and improved overall health.
Hello, and welcome to Episode 3, Surviving the Holidaze. Today I'm going to talk to you about how you can survive the holidays. Right now, we're right in the thick of it. Halloween was about a month and a half ago, Thanksgiving last week. Here we are, first week of December of 2013, and Christmas seems like it's right around the corner. Everywhere you go, there's Christmas stuff, Christmas music, Christmas decorations, Christmas food. Even my kids are running around with Santa hats on. The whole house is decorated. It's great. I love it. I love the Christmas season. I love Christmas songs, old classic Christmas songs, that is. I love the parties, the festivities. Most people are in a better mood, as long as you stay away from the malls. But the holidays are also very tricky and also very dangerous to our health, let's say. Not maybe necessarily fast dangerous, but slow, impending, putting on the pounds dangerous. Now, I have 3 parties to go to this year, 3 Christmas parties to go to. I'm not really too worried about it because I'm usually pretty good at parties. I don't generally overeat or overdrink, maybe occasionally, but it's not a habit. But it is going to be there, and there's going to be foods that I'm not used to eating. I don't eat a lot of sweets. I will have some cookies now and then or some ice cream or something sweet, but not all that often. My sweets generally consist of fruit. Yep, that's about it, fruit. And some dark chocolate now and then. The average person puts on anywhere from 8 to 10 pounds every holiday season. Now, that's kind of a lot of weight to put on in 2 or 2.5, 3 months maybe, depending on how far you go back. The holiday seasons generally start in Halloween when all the candy's out, and that's what really triggers it. I've known lots of adults who have said, oh, I don't really care about candy or Halloween, but then you talk to them after Halloween, and they say, oh, yeah, I had some. I nibbled a little bit here or there. And the trouble is it gets that taste in your mouth. I had some cake last weekend, and then I had the opportunity to have some cake today. Normally, I would have said no way because I don't even really like cake. It's too sweet, and there's not enough nutrition in it. It's just empty, wasted calories. But I had it, and it tasted really good. I felt crappy afterwards. I felt really crappy afterwards. So I went out and I jumped on a stationary bike and I pedaled for a while, and I had to pedal through just feeling yucky. I didn't eat that much. I ate 1 piece, literally. But I wanted to lay down on the floor and kind of curl up. But instead, I drank water and I pedaled. And about 15 minutes later, I was feeling pretty good. 30 minutes later, I was feeling great. And so I kept pedaling, and I felt great the rest of the day. So I was successful, and I burned off that food that's really not good for my body, that my body doesn't like. But if I'm at a party, I don't really have that opportunity. I stand around and talk to people, maybe nibble on something here, nibble on something there, drink sweet drinks. Who knows what's going to be there? And that's another one of the problems. You often don't know what's going to be there. If you can bring food or drink, then you can always have what you brought. But if you didn't, you're kind of left to chance. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, is how you can deal with parties and when you get stuck at a situation that you don't like or that's not ideal for you. What can you do? What are the best tips and tricks that I use and that I tell people that have really helped before? One thing I try to keep in mind this time of year is any weight I gain, I'm going to have to take off again. It's kind of like credit card debt. If you spend money, you go to the store and you buy a bunch of Christmas presents that you don't have money for, you spend it, you spend money you don't have by using a credit card, you're going to get that bill in the mail in January, and it's going to be harsh. It's going to be a rude awakening. It's going to be a bit of a hangover. I usually have a holiday hangover all through January just because it's been such a whirl, and January is so much different than December. There's this buildup of the whole year, and December comes along, and people tend to have this attitude of letting loose and doing things they wouldn't normally do and eating things they wouldn't normally eat and spending money they don't have and maybe getting drunk or drunker or not working or whatever the case may be, which is fine. We need to we need to have a time to kind of blow off and relax, release steam, and do the things that keep you balanced overall throughout life. But minimizing that hangover in January is really crucial, because I've had a few years where I just thought, man, this is horrible. I am not looking forward to next Christmas season at all. I don't want another Christmas. Maybe I'm just going to leave the country in mid-December just so I don't have to be a part of it. And of course I didn't, and I was smarter about it the following year. And that really helped and made me feel a lot better. But think of charging up your credit card and getting that bill in the mail. That's the same thing as when when your head clears out of that daze early January 1st, 2nd, whenever it is, you get on the scale, you look in the full length mirror naked, and you just don't like what you see, and you realize that you did a lot of harm to your body, and now you need to repair it. So let's say you gain 10 pounds over the holiday season. How long do you think it would take you to burn that off? Probably not a month. If you're really super hardworking and diligent, that would be about the quickest you could, but most likely 2 months. You can gain that in a month, take 2 months to take it off. Not a real great return. But summer's coming along, so you do have some motivation eventually, and it's okay if it takes 4 or 5 months to burn off. But what if you don't get it all off? Let's say you gain 10 and only lose 8 pounds. Yeah, so what? 2 extra pounds. That's not that big of a deal. Well, consider this. The average American gains 1 to 2 pounds a year from the time they're age 25. All right, 2 pounds, no big deal. Well, 10 years goes by. 2 pounds a year, that adds up to 20 pounds. 20 excess pounds is quite a lot, and that is definitely approaching the big deal. And if that keeps going, yeah, you know what it is. Another 10 years and there's 40 pounds on you, and that's going to be daunting and really hard to take off. So what do? Well, you try to keep a level head. Have some fun, but have a little bit of restraint at the same time. Pick your calories. Choose what you eat. Well, one thing I like to do when I'm going into an unknown situation, not knowing what kind of food there will be, I will eat before I go. And that gives me a really good excuse if the host offers me something that I really don't want, like, let's say, a cookie. Because I know that sweets not just are bad for me, but they don't make me feel good, like I just explained with the cake. Somebody gives me a cookie. If I'm hungry, I'm going to eat it. I will. I don't care how smart I am and how many times I've done this and failed and have been regretful of it. I will eat it if I'm hungry. But if I eat before I go to the party and somebody offers me a cookie, I can easily say, no, thanks, maybe later. You know, one thing about winter is it's not just the parties, but there seems to be this kind of primitive, natural instinct to put on your winter weight, to put on a little bit of excess, to keep you warmer and to have some reserve fuel in case you need it, some reserve energy in case you don't get any food. Now, chances are that's not going to be the case with anybody listening here. You're going to have food. Food is prevalent. Food has been prevalent for 80 to 100 years for most people. But going back thousands and millions of years, it hasn't been. And so the body has adapted to putting on excess weight as the days grow shorter and cooler. But we don't live like that anymore. So we need to find solutions that allow us to get through the winter without hibernating. One thing, of course, is exercise. Keep your regular exercise routine. Or if you don't have a regular routine in the summer months, develop one in the winter. I'm going to give you 10 tips that should make it a lot easier to survive big dinner parties, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or just a party in between, or maybe even going out to a restaurant. Hopefully it'll help you to avoid overeating. And that really is the case. Overeating could be eating too frequently where you're at a party and you're just munching the whole time. It could also mean eating one big giant meal. When I was a kid, I had this attitude about Thanksgiving that it was sort of a competition, not necessarily with others, but with yourself to see how much you could eat. And I would go into Thanksgiving intending to eat as much as I possibly could. I wanted to see how many plates full of food I could eat. And I think I hit 4 or 5 one time. Granted, I was probably 17-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I felt lousy afterwards. And consider that I was eating all day leading up to it. We used to have chips and nuts and some other things sitting out on the table, and I'd lay around watching the Twilight Zone marathon and eat. That's it. I would just munch all day, and then dinner would come along, and honestly, I really wasn't very hungry. In fact, I felt kind of lousy because I had just been laying there eating, putting in a lot of calories in my body. But hey, what are you going to do? It's Thanksgiving dinner, so I'd go in and I would eat and clean my plate and fill her up again. And 5 wasn't the ordinary, but I think I recall that one time that I did 5. I know I would get 3 pretty regularly, but eventually I wised up and I decided I really didn't like to feel full. I really didn't like that sensation, but the food tasted really good. And the next year came along and I didn't have a competition or a challenge perspective or attitude, but I still ate more than I should have because, heck, it's good. And it's the kind of food that we don't have very often. I rarely had the opportunity to eat turkey or mashed potatoes or gravy or yams or pumpkin pie or pecan pie. These are all things that only came around once a year, maybe some of it at Christmas, but pretty much once a year. So I ate it. But eventually, you know what really saved me is knowing that there would be leftovers. Yeah, simple as that. I love leftovers. They're quick, they're easy, they're delicious. You just have to warm them up. Maybe not as good as first overs, but they're still really, really good. And just knowing that I could go back and eat the same food again in a smaller quantity and enjoy it a second time made all the difference in the world. Also, when you eat something, when you take a bite, anything after the first bite never tastes as good as that first bite, and you're constantly trying to get that pow in your mouth, that flavor burst of whatever it was that you ate, but it's kind of deadened. And the more you eat, the less intense it is, and it sort of dulls. And so really the best way to get that back is to eat a small meal and wait an hour or two and have a little bit more. So this last Thanksgiving was probably my 3rd or 4th in a row that I did not have seconds or any more than firsts. I put my food on my plate, and I took what I wanted, and I ate slowly and visited and chewed. And when it was done, I was done. Went for a walk, had some dessert. Then about 3 hours after all that, I had Thanksgiving dinner all over again. Smaller portions because it was later at night, but it was really good. And that's what I was looking forward to. Felt kind of sneaky being able to do that. I don't know why. It was just it's a fun little treat that I have. So let me go over the tips that I have for not overeating. Plan to not overeat. Simple as that. Your attitude will do wonders. Have your mindset to not overeat. I'm not going to overeat. It's as simple as that. Don't challenge yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm going to try not to overeat. Be firm. Be confident. Say what you're going to do or what you are not going to do. Make it a positive statement. I am not going to overeat. It sounds silly, but it works. As you're approaching mealtime, just put it in your head. I'm not going to overeat. That's what I did 3 or 4 years ago. I said, I'm not going to have more than 1 plate. And I really wanted to because it was habit, because so many years I had had seconds and maybe thirds, and it was really hard not to. And I quite literally had to sit on my hands for a while, and then I got up off the table and put my plate away and walked around or something like that just to get out of the atmosphere where the food was. But I went in with the attitude that I'm not going to overeat. And I didn't. And I was really, really proud of myself for that. That was quite an accomplishment. Fancy dinners, big dinners, holiday dinners, they might be delicious. It might be food that you don't have all the time. But once again, if you go into it with the attitude that you're going to overeat, chances are almost certainly, in fact, I don't know why you wouldn't overeat. If your mindset is to overeat, you will. If your mindset is to not overeat, you probably won't. The thing is, you have the power. The power is right there in your brain. Everything you do is caused by your brain. What you think is your own thoughts, and you don't have to take food that somebody gives you if you don't want it. If you don't want to overeat, don't overeat. Here's another tip that a lot of people miss. Eating breakfast and eating lunch. Let's say we're going to Christmas dinner. You know it's going to be a big dinner. You know you're probably going to eat more than you should. I really, really strongly recommend that you do not starve yourself. Starving yourself only sets you up for definitely overeating, because when you come into the meal, if you're already feeling very hungry, you are going to fill that void. So if you eat breakfast and eat, let's say, a light breakfast and a light lunch, get some activity in, then by the time dinner comes along, you're not overwhelmed with starvation and hunger and the need to make up what you missed. Water is key. Drink water. A lot of times we eat thinking that we're hungry when really all we need is water. I would say, first of all, start your day by drinking water. Have some water as soon as you wake up and drink it throughout the day. Have 5 or 6 glasses throughout the day. But definitely, when you first sit down to a meal, have a nice long drink of water. Drink about half of your glass. And continue to drink throughout the meal, and that will greatly reduce the amount of calories that you can eat because your stomach will be full with water. Another one is eat slowly. It takes about 20 minutes for the signal to get from your stomach up to your brain, telling your brain that you've had enough to eat. If you eat really quickly, you can be done by the time that signal gets up there, and that's only the signal saying that food got here. It doesn't tell the brain that it's had enough until it actually has had enough. So let's say you gobble your food down in 15 minutes. By the time you hit the 10-minute mark, that's probably how much you needed, but it's going to take another 20 minutes to get up to your brain. If you go for second portions, you're definitely going to overeat, and you're not even going to know it until that second is probably all the way down. So I recommend you take a bite, put your fork or your spoon down, and chew, 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 and then swallow. Try having a little conversation in the middle of it. Talk to somebody. But definitely put your fork down, put your sandwich down, put your spoon down, whatever you have. Don't load up. Don't prepare. Just wait until your mouth is empty before you get ready to take another bite. Small portions really make a big difference. If you have a full plate full of food, you're probably going to eat it. And especially if you're at somebody's house, you're not going to send it back. You're not going to put it back in the dish. You probably don't want to insult them by not eating something or not eating all of something. So just take a little bit. If somebody else is serving you, tell them, give you just a little bit. You can have seconds, right? So have a little small portion now, and if you need more, go ahead and have seconds. Now, my 6th tip is to really realize that you're human, and maybe you will be overwhelmed by the delicious flavors of these foods and you eat more than you intend to. You're human. Food tastes good. Food is part of one of the joys of life. So really what I'm getting at is be easy on yourself. If you do mess up, you can fix yourself with the next meal. You can fix yourself just by going out and exercising. If you overeat, go for a walk. Even if you don't overeat, go for a walk. But especially if you overeat, get out and go for a walk. A nice walk after Thanksgiving meal or Christmas dinner is just fantastic. It helps digestion, makes you feel better. It mobilizes those calories that you just ate. And that's really the trick, to keep them from settling in body parts that you don't want them to settle in. If you don't want that food you ate to turn into fat, you've got to use it. And I don't mean you have to go for a run. It doesn't have to be vigorous, but go out for a brisk 20-minute walk. It'll really make a big difference. Tip number 7 I've already discussed, but that is leftovers. Leftovers are delicious. They'll save you time later. Have that special treat, that special meal a second time, or maybe even a third time. Tip number 8, I've already said this twice so far, but get some light exercise. Some people like to go to the gym before they have a big meal. I think that's great. That's wonderful. I will sometimes go for a nice bike ride, and that way I come in all refreshed, and the body is really hungry for food and willing and ready to take in those calories. I have that window of opportunity where I can just put it in and it goes directly into my muscles. that's a great thing to do. But that shouldn't mean that you just sit around afterwards. If you have any chance at all to go for a nice light walk, it's a great thing to do with your party guests. Have your friends and family go out for a walk with you. Walk around the neighborhood. Look at the stars. Look at Christmas lights. Look at other houses. Just have a nice chat. Another thing is set a good example. People will see what you eat and how you eat. People always look at me when they see me in a grocery store, they look at my basket, what kind of foods am I buying? If they see me in a restaurant, they look at my food, what's he eating? Or if I bump into them and they have food, they say, oh, this is not the kind of food I normally eat. That's for a friend of mine. I understand. We like the foods we like to eat. Sometimes we don't eat the way we normally eat. It's cool. You don't have to explain yourself to me. But at the same time, I shouldn't have to explain myself to you. I do eat really healthy most of the time, but about 10% of the time, I have some stuff that is just not the best for me. But I do like to set a good example. And sometimes it makes people feel bad about themselves, and they give me a hard time, and they want to know why I won't eat Cheetos and Coke for a meal. And I tell them it doesn't make me feel good. It's not good for my body. And really, most importantly, to me at the time, it does not make me feel very good at all physically. So it's not even a holier than thou situation. It's just the fact that I've experimented so much that I know what works and what doesn't. And junk food and sugary foods and sugars and chips and deep fried things just don't make my body feel good. The number one thing I can tell you, the number one tip, this is my number 10 tip. Number 10 is number 1, but I saved the best for last. Plan ahead. If you know what you're getting into, you have a much better chance of doing well. If you know that there's going to be turkey and gravy and mashed potatoes, you can go into it in your head and decide what you're going to eat and how much of it you're going to eat. If you have no idea what you're getting into, it's much more likely you're going to make a bad choice. If you go to a party and they don't have any healthy food around, they just have a bunch of snacks, cookies and treats and candies and things like that, and you haven't eaten in a while, you're going to eat those things. You are. I would. Most people would. You're hungry, there's food. Even if you call candy food, which I'm not sure I would, but you're going to eat those things. So if you don't know what you're getting into, maybe eat on the way, but do your best to find out what will be there. Plan ahead. Decide if you need to have a snack on the way. Decide if you maybe want to go late after a lot of the stuff has been used up so you don't get the pressure from the host. Think about the situation ahead of time. How could you best survive? And it doesn't have to be like a jail sentence. It doesn't have to be restricting. Just think of it as doing something good for yourself. Your body will thank you. Your body will thank you in many ways. Most of all, by feeling good and being fit and healthy and having energy and just being a better working structure. If you bring food to a party, bring food that you like. That way you at least have that thing to eat. If there's nothing else good to eat, at least you have that good food. And when I say good food, I mean healthy. And when I say healthy, I don't mean bad tasting. I mean good tasting, good, healthy food. Hey, here's an idea. What about throwing a party that's not centered around food? Yeah, you gather people. You're definitely going to have some food, but what if you have a party and play games? Do some outdoor games. You could do some indoor games. Touch football is pretty fun. Go for a hike. Maybe go for a hike and then have a little picnic. Potlucks are a lot of fun, but they're risky. You don't know what you're going to get. So maybe you could designate the foods that people bring. You have a little list. Hey, you bring a salad, you bring a starch, you bring some vegetables, you bring some meat, things like that. So to recap my 10 tips for surviving the holidays. Number 1, plan to not overeat. Number 2, eat regular throughout the day. Eat a normal breakfast, eat your little mini meals in between, and eat a decent lunch. And when I say decent, I don't mean big. I mean enough to get you by, enough to satisfy you so you don't go into the main meal starving. Number 3, drink plenty of water. Winter is cold and usually dry, and the body dehydrates so much easier in the winter than in the summer. And the worst thing is we don't even notice it because it is cold. We don't sweat. We don't feel hot, so we don't have that thirst trigger as readily available. When you're thirsty, you don't have to have eggnog or alcohol or caffeine. Have water. Drink 5 or 6 glasses of water a day. When you do eat, eat slowly. Taste your food, enjoy the flavor, enjoy the texture, enjoy the company. Number 5, keep your portions small. You probably have a lot of little treats, a lot of opportunities to eat small things. So when the meal comes along, you really won't need all of those calories of a full regular meal if you've been munching here and there. Number 6, be easy on yourself. You're only human. It's okay if you make a mistake. Don't beat yourself up about it. You're not in trouble. But pick yourself back up as soon as possible. Get on your feet. Get back on that horse. You're only as far away as your next meal for recovering. Remember, you don't have to stuff yourself now if you can get leftovers. Get some leftovers of the meal you're eating and have them again later. If the meal tasted good the first time, it'll taste good a second time. Get some light exercise. After you eat, go for a walk, maybe a bike ride. It really helps mobilize those calories before they have a chance to deposit. Number 9, set a good example. People are watching. People will see. Even if you don't know that they're looking or seeing, they will know what you have on your plate. Even if you don't know that they're watching you or haven't told you that they really care, they will see what you're doing, what you're eating, and how you're living. And if you are thin and fit and lean and you are eating a certain way, they are more likely to emulate you than feel bitter that you are thin, lean, and fit and can eat whatever you want. That just builds animosity. So it's a good thing to show them that you do like vegetables and that you don't eat a whole lot of chips and dip, but you still have some because you're not in jail. The last tip, number 10, plan ahead. The more you know going into a situation, the better prepared you can be for it. Thanks for listening to Live Fit Podcast number 3, Tips for Surviving the Holidays. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with your friends. Tell your friends all about it. Subscribe on iTunes, and best of all, leave me a review on iTunes. Seriously, it really does help. It's not for my ego, though I wouldn't mind. If you say good things, it would help. But it really helps me get noticed on iTunes so more people can see it and more people can learn, and we can kind of spread the word on staying fit, lean, and living fit for life. Thank you very much, and have a great day.